Good morning, everybody. My name is Kirsten Nagel. I am a customer success manager with Adobe, and I am thrilled to have all of you here today to learn more about personal branding and some of the impacts that we have encountered and experienced with The Ohio State University. So we want to talk with you a little bit about that program that we developed and kind of how we got there, and making sure that, oops, we've got the right screen here. So when it comes to personal branding, it really becomes a matter of who am I? It's something that we've been exploring a lot at Adobe is how can we help the students tell more about their story and who they are and where they're going, and what else are they passionate about? And this is across any student. So it becomes more than what a degree that they're earning or anything like that, but really about what else are they passionate about? How does that tie into making them a better employee and who they are? And it's something that we've been working on for some time with career services or student affairs or other groups of people like that on campus, and really got into what are the needs of employers today and what are they asking for potential recruits. Even the types of resumes have changed. The requirements for potentially needing an introductory video or a good headshot for social media. And those were all things that we began to address. So then in June of 2021, it was the whole name, image, likeness, NIL. It blew up and it got everybody talking. And there was a lot of focus in this space around NIL and trying to figure out, well, what does that mean and how does that impact us? And that got us thinking a little bit more about, okay, what is going on in that space, and how can we help those students? So we really sat around and thought, okay, we have this thing going on with personal branding, and we've got this group of student athletes, some of which are really going to take advantage of the name, image, likeness possibilities and the types of things that they want to or are able to do going forward. But there's also, another group of students that are just student athletes, and that is where they're going to end their athletic career. And how do we help them connect? Okay, this is who I am and what I've learned as an athlete, and tie that together with their personal branding. And I thought, that's an interesting concept. Where can we go with that? So I reached out to my friends down at Ohio State and started looking around and really wanted to answer the question, if we brought a group of student athletes together, what could that potentially look like and what would be the impact to them? And so I literally started looking people up online, and I sent McKenna an email saying, I've got this crazy idea. I'm going to be in Columbus. Are you able to sit down with us and have a conversation and talk further about this? And she responded back and copied Logan, said, absolutely, come on in, and we will meet. So from there, I am going to turn it over, and I am doing too many things at once. Gotta get out of this. Stop sharing. Okay, there we go. Thank you to everybody again, and most importantly, thank you to The Ohio State University and coming in and speaking with all of you today. I will let them introduce themselves and their roles and talk about their own journey and kind of how their perspective is and how they got here.
Thanks, Kirsten. First off, I want to thank you for setting this up, and obviously the partnership with Adobe, and everyone else for hopping on this call. As you know, I think that there's a lot of collaboration that can happen in this space. So really appreciate you all hopping on. My name is Logan Hiddle. I'm the Assistant Athletics Director for Name, Image, and Likeness here at Ohio State. Been in this seat for a little while. Former student athlete here, and really grateful to serve our student athletes in several capacities. And to work alongside my colleague here, and I'll let McKenna kind of introduce herself and start off the presentation.
Yeah, just to kind of echo Logan, thank you, Kirsten, for setting this up, and thank you to everyone for joining us. We're excited to share a little bit about what we've been working on. My name is McKenna Lynch. I am Assistant Athletic Director for Student Athlete Development and Operational Strategy. I graduated in 2014. I was also a student athlete here at Ohio State, so both Buckeyes through and through. But started working for the department in 2014, right after I graduated. So have been here for a little bit, and really fortunate to work alongside Logan and some of our other colleagues. Before we tell you about the Creator Challenge and how this all came to be, we thought it'd be helpful just to kind of give an overview of our roles and how Logan and I work together. As I know this is not kind of the standard across the country at many universities, but we're pretty unique, that we actually get to work collaboratively with student athlete development and NIL on a daily basis. So want to kind of highlight what the Eugene D. Smith Leadership Institute is. So this is our staff. Most of us are former student athletes. Melissa was a dancer, Mari played lacrosse, Kate was a rower, Logan played football, Carrie was a gymnast. So a lot of athletics backgrounds that we have here on our staff, which I think is important that we've been in the shoes of the student athletes. We know what it's like to be trying to build their resume with career experience while building their brand for NIL, while trying to maintain, excellent grades on the field and things like that. So want to just kind of briefly show this, as it's not like a collaboration just between Logan and myself. We really have a whole staff that helped to make this program possible and to support our student athletes. So our overall mission in the Institute is to provide leadership, character, and career development for all of our student athletes, really to make sure they're well-rounded and prepared for life after graduation. So whatever that looks like for them, whether they're planning to continue their sport, a lot of our student athletes actually don't go on to play at the next level. So I know a lot of people think, at Ohio State, most of our student athletes go pro, but that's really not the case. A lot of them are going to graduate school or going on, into their career in the workforce. So our goal is that prior to graduating, every single one of our student athletes has accepted a job, been accepted to graduate school, or have signed a professional contract. And we actually track this on the day of graduation. So this past year, we actually set a record with 95% of our student athletes falling into one of those three categories prior to even walking across the stage. On the next slide, you should see a little bit of a breakdown month over month. So we track this every single month, working with each of our graduating seniors to make sure that they are set up for success whenever their playing days are over, whenever they graduate. So like I said, 95% is where we were this past year. We've grown every single year since the Leadership Institute started 5 years ago, but this is really why we do what we do. So I wanted to make sure we showed this just to kind of give a little bit of context into how we kind of came up with this program. So like I said, our goal is to get to that 100% mark. We do this through a variety of different programs. Really focused, we call it Real Life. That's kind of our career side. Live Life is our personal development side, and NIL, and then Leadership is really the leadership development component. So we have a bunch of different programs. The Adobe Creator Challenge is one of these, right? So we view it kind of as an intersection between career and NIL. So as Kirsten kind of mentioned, the Adobe Creator Challenge. Sorry, I got a little bit of feedback there. As Kirsten mentioned, the Creator Challenge really came up as a context between how can we help our student athletes build their personal brand while also setting them up for success in their career. So we know that, a lot of employers are looking for people who have a strong personal brand, who are familiar with a lot of creative different, content and tools. So we really thought Adobe would be a strong partner in this space. So the Creator Challenge was something that we kind of came up with really as an opportunity for student athletes to go through a personal branding series, learn, how to use Adobe tools while also building their brand and how to present that brand, actually giving them the opportunity to present that using Adobe's technology. So this is kind of a timeline of how it all happened. Wanted to highlight the process, then Logan will go into a little bit more detail on what the challenge actually consisted of. Like Kirsten said, September 30th, I got a random outreach from her. I think she actually said, before you ignore my email, I promise I'm not trying to sell you something. I just want to see how we can partner in this space, which was great. So I appreciate her reaching out. The next week, we were actually able to turn around and meet with Kirsten and the marketing team at Adobe. Logan and I were super excited about what they were talking about. So they kind of told us all of the different educational opportunities that they had, ways that we could partner, and kind of some of their ideas on how we could collaborate at the intersection of career and NIL. Logan and I operated a really quick pace. So we turned around a proposal pretty quickly. And within the week, we actually submitted a proposal back to Adobe for what we were considering the Creator Challenge. So an opportunity, in this educational platform to partner with Adobe in this space. Luckily, Adobe said, yes, let's try it. Let's give it a run. And we started to kick off on January 25th. So we actually launched the program at the start of spring semester. And then we led bi-weekly sessions. So every other Wednesday from January to March, we actually met with the student athletes and they learned a different platform or a different tool, from Adobe every other week. At the end of March, they actually presented their portfolio to global executives from across the world from various companies. Through those sessions that we met with bi-weekly, they actually we get a takeaway to actually put into a portfolio. So that portfolio was what they presented to those executives. We met with the different companies then and actually notified the winners that they got internships in April. And then in May, they had those week-long internships with a couple of different companies. And then we met with them at the end of May to do a recap session, feedback, so we could learn from them, learn from their experience, and implement changes moving forward. And now I'll turn it over to Logan to go a little bit more detail of what the challenge actually consisted of.
Thanks, McKenna. Great setup for this. So, as Kirsten and McKenna both kind of mentioned, we're very, very intentional here at Ohio State, as you can tell with our student athlete development initiatives. And McKenna and I work more closely than probably most in our department, and very grateful for that as we figure out ways that we can be intentional about programming and really create the best foundation for our student athletes. So, as she mentioned, I'm focused on the NIL space, and I see a lot of familiar names in the room that also work or are peers in the NIL space. So social media is king right now, and content is king. So for us, we do education all the time for student athletes to learn what their personal brand is, right? That's simple. Who are you? What do you stand for? What are your values? How do you represent them? That was a piece that we felt was potentially missing. So when Adobe reached out, it was really, really empowering for us to think about, their software. We're a creative campus. So I think that's something that was really, really unique, as I'm sure many other campuses on here are. That's why you're here. So we figured we would use their tools to help student athletes learn how to visually present their brand, and how to create good content, how to edit pictures, do things that are going to really help them create better content. So we use these 3 platforms throughout that 8 weeks that we did bi-weekly education. So we started with Adobe Express, and our idea was that Express was going to be basically the canvas or the portfolio that the student athletes were going to use to put all of the other content that they created via the other software to be able to present. So Express became a platform that they really honed in on and that they were able to use for different really facets throughout their career. So NIL became one, right? Because they curate this brand portfolio that they can present to business owners, local companies, organizations, but then also from a career perspective, they can put their resume on it. They can actually outline things that they've accomplished in their career, which is really, really empowering. Because for us in our approach here at Ohio State, NIL obviously is an opportunity right now to maximize and earn supplemental income. But we know and we teach that those relationships that you're building with CMOs, CEOs in different industries can turn into lifelong opportunities. So for us, that was a really, really powerful way to use Express to create those portfolios within the overall presentation of this program. Adobe Rush was a great way for them to learn how to edit short form videos. So for us, we understand, like I said, that short form video is really, really pertinent in this space and in NIL. So to be able to create a short form content to present to a brand or to articulate your brand was really, really helpful for them. So we went through sessions. Kirsten and her team met with our student athletes to help them understand and walk through this platform. And the way we structured things was that they would actually walk through it with them and learn the platform, but then we would give them a task and homework assignments that they would be able to do and bring back. So that way, when they put it in their portfolio, we were able to review it. So that way, when they got in front of executives, we felt like it was pretty polished up. So Adobe Rush was another great platform in this space. Like I said, short form content. It really allowed an efficient way for them to create that. That way, they didn't have to become full-time content creators or experts in different platforms. They could do it all via Adobe and then put it all in their Express portfolio. Lastly, Adobe Lightroom. We felt that this was a really important one as we think about photo editing, right? So all of this kind of came together. They were able to edit photos, make sure that, remove things in the background, right? That was a big piece to be able to make sure that the photo looked exactly like they wanted it to, and maybe a photo that captured something in the background that they didn't want, they were able to edit and remove. So all of these things were really, really important. Like I said, you're going to keep hearing me talk about this Express page, which I'll show here in a second. But this really was, the whole idea was to create this portfolio that could be used for career and NIL. Because like I said, we really harp on that the intersection of those two things will allow our student athletes to not only have short-term success, whether that's in NIL or long-term success with career, if they're able to do these things and really present them at a high level. So I'm going to kind of walk through this. This is a screenshot from one of our student athletes' portfolios. As you can tell, they weren't experts in the space by any means, but if we would have showed you the content they made at the beginning and the content that they were able to be educated on and create at the end, it was a drastic change and the things that they learned. So Morgan was one of our student athletes from the women's rowing team. So she did a great job talking about and really creating what she stood for. So I'll talk through that in a second, but as you can tell, this is the first page that she kind of created to really grab the audience's attention. She made her own profile, right? So in this space, when you're thinking about student athletes and how they're going to articulate who they are and kind of what they stand for, in a short blurb that maybe catch somebody's attention online, digitally, or something that you can actually print out and hand off. This was something that she created. So Morgan did a really good job of taking this opportunity and really being intentional about it to create, like I said, short-term and long-term opportunities first. So I'm going to stop sharing this slide and walk through the other one real quick. Bear with me. All right. So here is her actual Express page. The really unique thing about this, and this is why it's something that we thought was really, really unique, is, when they updated their Express page, the link would stay the same, right? So they were able to update it in live time. Our student athletes were able to make edits, but that link would still stay the same. So this is actually the link that Morgan submitted at the end of her presentation a few months ago, and we pulled it up today. So she was able to use Rush, right, to create a video on here introducing herself. So we didn't make them, but we made part of the portfolio implementing things from all the different platforms. So she used Adobe Rush to create a video that kind of talked about who she was. We tied in career once again, as she used one of the platforms to create a resume, as it says right here in Express and Lightroom, to edit her photo or her headshot. So she pulled down a blank headshot that she had gotten from our creative team and edited it. This is that player profile, or kind of that player card that she created to be able to represent who she is and kind of give a little bit of a bio about her in really more of a creative and aesthetically pleasing way. And then she kind of got into the content. So she wanted to talk about, as you saw in the header slide, lessons learned of being a Division I rower. So, rowing is a sport that she really wanted to bring awareness to, because I don't know, there's a lot of institutions on this call. I saw names there coming in. I'm not sure how many have rowing. So this is something that she's really, really passionate about, to talk about her journey and why is she passionate about rowing, right? And I think that all of us know that work in the student athlete services space, that why is really important. So for us, it was her to really think about that. That was the first challenge, was to think about why does she do what she does? Why is she who she is? And then she actually used all of the components of Express to go through and talk about the lessons that she has learned as a Division I rower. So I'll scroll through this just because I think she did a really good job of actually talking about who she was and why she is who she is, in the lessons that she's learned being a Division I athlete here at Ohio State. So all of these things, as we talked about, are bits that she can either take to companies or organizations in NIL and really pitch herself, or from a career standpoint, knowing how to give her elevator pitch, right? These are things that she can include in that. But once again, it's just more of a kind of visually pleasing way for her to put all of her thoughts and ideas together and then present that to someone. So she did a really good job of this, using all the platforms that we asked her to. And if we can ask for her permission to maybe share this, Kirsten, with people that are on the call, if she's okay with that, so they can see him. But she also created, she tagged her Instagram and then created some Instagram posts. So creating better content, that she has a fitness page, as you can see up here on the left. So creating content that is engaging for her followers and something that she wasn't super passionate about, but this program made her find passion that she didn't really know she had at the time. So back to the other screen. Sorry, bouncing all around. Appreciate you all staying with us. Oh, that's the wrong one. All right, so we talk about the intersection of career and NIL. This is something that we're really, really passionate about. Like I said, and McKenna and I, that's why we work so well together, is because, you know, from our athletic director down, we have the same vision, and that's providing the best experience for our student athletes, whether that's in, you know, creating internship opportunities or creating innovative programs, or whether that's, you know, giving them education and the foundational skills to succeed in NIL. Our vision is really the same. So for us, you know, the intention of this program was, like I said, to develop those skills. We went through the timeline, as you can see, creating the content, creating the brand portfolio. You know, they presented it to executives from different organizations across the country. And the ultimate goal was that they were able to take that portfolio and show it to those organizations and hopefully get some opportunity to expand in the career or industry of interest. So as you can see, 6 of our student athletes earned internships as a result of the program, and they're able to actually go get that tangible work experience that they can put on their resume. So, you know, as we break it down and talk through it again, you know, we were lucky that Kirsten reached out to us and we kind of ran with the idea and created it from scratch. But it was really the idea of how do we get them to understand who they are and why that's important to them. How do we use this software and technology to help them build skills in an era that is very socially driven, to learn those things and really become more fluent in them? And then how do we tie that into career, right? How do we get more opportunities on their resume to make them more well-rounded in industry or career of choice? So for us, we really feel like we hit all 3 of those things. And we did it at a really, really high level. So Blake, as you can see, actually was able to apply to the Adobe Sales Academy program, and actually got the opportunity to be a part of that program, which her education and skills that she learned in this program, what really helped her in her application process for that. So once again, I think we did a really good job of it. It was a pilot for us, so it was a learning experience for McKenna and myself and Kirsten and her whole team. They were super flexible with us. We actually, you know, went back and forth with some virtual and in-person sessions, so our education kind of fluctuated depending on the needs of the student athletes. And then we actually were able to, as McKenna talked about, sit down with all of our student athletes and kind of debrief. Because I think one thing that, you know, is important in our space is hearing our student athletes, right? And making sure that we're actually providing them with the things that they want and in the way that they want to receive it. So received some really good feedback. We're really, really excited about changing some things and tweaking some things, maybe the delivery, but really, really excited with how this program turned out and the result, and the development skills that our student athletes got to really better themselves and understand who they are. And like I said, become more fluent in technology that is used all across college campuses across the world. That's why you're all here. So might have been a little quicker than people wanted, but it really was a really great experience for our student athletes and for us as administrators. And once again, we're just continuously trying to find innovative ways to prepare our student athletes for every phase and every facet of life. And any way that we can tie that career and NIL piece together for us here at Ohio State is ultimately going to be the goal. And I think we did a good job of that. So.
Hey, Logan.
Yes.
This is Keith. I'm just monitoring the chat pod here a little bit. We had a question from Red Madden saying digital literacy and digital citizenship is key. What additional instruction is provided to guide student athletes in ethical content creation? Great question.
Yeah, great question. So for us, you know, like I said, we're very, very intentional about the education piece of things. You know, I think we try to be open-minded with making sure that we provide student athletes with the right structure with that, but we're also very careful with what we, you know, advise student athletes to do and to not do. So we provide examples and say, this is an opportunity of how you can present your brand on social media, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's up to the student athlete. And we never, as the university, want to put ourselves in a situation to where we're telling them what they can and can't do from a personal content creation standpoint. Now, if they're using Ohio State marks and they're, you know, doing it in our facilities and are affiliated with Ohio State in some sense in the content, then we have a little more say. But in personal content, it's really about that education, and the education's key. And we rely on our, you know, external stakeholders and our consultants that we actually have, you know, on retainer and contract. We bring in companies like Meta that talk about what makes, you know, student athletes successful in the space, educating them on a positive, you know, social media platform, how to get engagement. And then, you know, once again, that's why Adobe was such a great partner, was teaching them the tools and the resources to be able to create that positive content that, you know, reflects who they are and the way that they want to reflect it.
Can you stop sharing, Logan, so we can see your smiling face?
Absolutely. I don't know that anybody wants to see that.
There we go. One of the questions that came up from Kelly is, how do we present the content prompts And I can say that we work through that together as a team to figure out what those prompts would be and exactly what would be included in that final presentation or final portfolio. And we wanted to develop that portfolio, but we also wanted them to be able to take an image and adjust it, a headshot image. We wanted them to start and express from a template and create something that was from one of the templates, such as a resume or an infographic or something like that. You know, there were just certain things that we wanted them to include as part of their final piece and their final presentation that they gave at the end. So.
Yeah, and since we do have obviously some more time, we did rely a little bit on our digital branding center on campus. So for us, our athletic director and our senior leadership is very, very intentional. I know I use the word intentional a lot, but that's because we truly are about relationships across campus. And so for us, we relied, for that center to kind of provide some time for student athletes to pop in, get some extra questions when our Adobe staff is away. But for us, we really like to rely on our campus partners because they're experts in their space. And I think for us to be able to create a relationship across campus really pays dividends from an athletics department standpoint. So being able to pull in our digital branding and technology innovation center was super helpful for us. And I know that McKenna and I are thankful for that partnership to be able to open up their facility for drop-in hours and things like that. So it's really about utilizing all the partnerships. And that's why, this Adobe one came about, was from being a creative campus, and it really spiraled into us creating and developing and enhancing relationships across campus.
I will just kind of read off a lot of the questions that are coming in for you guys. How did you implement this, and exactly what was the challenge? I assume it was an opt-in and not a class.
Yeah, McKenna, go ahead. You got it.
Oh, sorry. So we have actually a platform that we use to reach out to student athletes based on different career interests, what they're looking to do in the future. So we specifically reached out to students who were interested in a creative field or marketing, and did, tailored outreach to them to see if they were interested. And then we just kind of opened it up to student athletes. So it was not a required class. It was completely optional for them to join. Once they said they wanted to be in the challenge, we asked that they be at every single session. So in order to do their presentation to the executives, they had to be at all the sessions. So we ended up having, it was a pilot program, so we wanted to keep it a little bit small just to kind of test it for our first year. So we ended up having around 15 to 20 students participate. So led to a high return, with 6 of them actually getting an internship as a result of the program. So we kept it pretty small, but that was intentional to start. But it was more of just a program that we ran within athletics. It was not a class by any means.
Can I interrupt? Sorry, can you repeat that number? I had a distraction, and that was one of my questions, is how many students participated in the challenge?
Yeah, so it was a pilot program. So we kept it kind of small intentionally, but we had 15 to 20 that had done it.
And it was a block of, like, it wasn't, students couldn't pick and choose because we were only meeting every other week. They participated in all the different sessions scheduling provided. The next question has to do with branding. Are most schools allowing the athletes to use the school marks? If so, what training safeguards are in place to prevent negative fallout from misuse, poor online behavior, et cetera?
Yeah, great question. McKenna, I'm just kidding. So that's obviously my space. We do allow student athletes to use marks. Our standards in the NIL space are if the company they're working with is a licensee, then they're able to obviously wear their apparel, promote the merchandise, the hard good, whatever that is, if it has Ohio State on it. And then the only other way is if the company they're working with is a corporate sponsor, right? So I'm assuming most of the people on here are familiar with multimedia rights. Our holder happens to be Learfield. So if student athletes are working with a company that pays for IP rights, intellectual property rights, which relate to our Ohio State logo, Blocko, Buckeye leaf, helmet stripe, any of those things, then student athletes are able to wear that or, utilize that in external marketing. So with that being said, all of those have reviewal processes, right? So those rights are owned by the university. So that content has to be reviewed by the university before it can be put public. So it is case by, I think I just saw somebody say case by case. It is case by case, scenario by scenario. Once again, you're going to hear me say it 100 times. Education is key. Educating the student athletes on the front end of the repercussions of, your own personal brand. If you go out there and obviously represent yourself in a negative fashion on social media or whatever that may be, but then once you tie the Ohio State brand into it, that also gives us a bad reputation if you go out and do something silly. So it's about the education piece on the front end, but then we do have strict reviewal processes because of the rights that people utilize and that people have to use those marks. So we put together a pretty, comprehensive program to be able to vet that and streamline that and be efficient with it. But once again, it always comes down to how are you educating your student athletes on the front end to prevent any of those scenarios.
One of the questions has, if you did this again, could students earn class credit for participation? I will say before they start, all the students that participated, all of them, did earn a sports marketing badge from Adobe because of the work that they did align to a badge that we are getting ready to be able to launch broadly. But I'll leave that for you, Ohio State team. That there's a whole lot of more complication if it turns into an actual class and not just a voluntary thing.
Yeah, so we are typically pretty hesitant to create things into a class. We do it in some ways, but it's a pretty robust process to actually get a class created for class credit here at Ohio State. So it takes, a year or more. And like I said, kind of when going through that timeline, we operate at a pretty quick timeline. So we didn't want to wait, a year and a half to do the pilot program. So as of right now, they would not be able to earn class credit for it. That's something we could look at in the future, but it would have to be, there's pretty strict hours regarding, credit hours and how frequently they have to meet and all those different things. So, since we did every other week for 8 weeks, it would have to be more frequent and for more hours in order for them to actually earn class credit for it. So as of right now, they cannot, but maybe in the future one day.
One of the questions was, what was this cost to you?
Yeah, it actually didn't cost us anything. Thanks to Kirsten and her support. She helped to coordinate a lot of those education sessions for us, but it actually did not cost us anything as a university.
I saw another question, Kirsten, which is very relevant. Somebody asked about it earlier. Are there basic templates from Adobe or third party that someone can, something came in and I just lost it. Templates someone could work from to quickly implement this type of project? The answer to that is yes. That's part of the beauty of Adobe Express. We won't go into that right now, but yes, there are templates built into Adobe Express to make this low lift, high impact.
Absolutely. As administrators, what insights have you gained into the experience of student athletes at Ohio State through their brand portfolios, both the process of creating them and the products? And how might these insights improve your programming and services for student athletes?
Yeah, I'll take that. I think that what we learned is student athletes are curious. And I think student athletes are, I think every campus probably has a few of those student athletes that if somebody said, hey, who's the best content creator out of your student athlete population, you would know them right off the top of your head. I think we're all in the same boat. I think that's every campus across the country. So for us, it's how do we find a baseline or a foundation to help those student athletes that really want to strive and, create good content and learn how to be a content creator. Maybe it's for NIL and maybe it's for other purposes of just wanting to tell their brand. So for us, I think we realized that we needed to find more entry-level education on these creative platforms to help them understand how to utilize them. They're really easy, not easy to use, right? But with some education, they are pretty user-friendly, maybe I'd say that. So being able to utilize those to help them with that, and then hoping that they get some return on it. And I think we haven't seen enough, had enough lead time to see if these student athletes have went out and pitched themselves to gain more opportunities. But what we do know is they feel way more comfortable in the content they create. that they feel way more comfortable in their use of the technology, whether that is for social media or maybe it's for professional uses. So for us, that's always the goal, is for them to feel more comfortable. I think personally, in an NIL space, that's hard to measure success, right? Because every person on the call that works in the space that I worked in measures it probably differently. But for us, we never want anyone to leave Ohio State and say they didn't know how to engage or they didn't have the resources to do so. So for us, this was another step in the right direction to prepare them, if they're interested, right, to be able to succeed and really build content and build skill sets that they can utilize further down in their career.
There are a number of questions in here around how you have found industry partners to provide internships for student athletes.
I look at my
Yeah,
partner.
I can take that one. So we are really fortunate here at Ohio State that we have such close proximity to the city of Columbus. We're really unique that we have, a major city about 15 minutes away from campus. So we're really, really fortunate that we have a ton of companies that want to hire student athletes. We actually had student athletes at about 100 different internships throughout the summer, all around Columbus. So everything from, in sales to design to finance, even interning with hospitals, doing research. So really across the board there. That's kind of my day-to-day, is working with companies, trying to explain the unique, benefits that a student athlete can bring to an organization, and then helping to work with the company in the front end to try to provide a flexible internship for our student athletes. So for some of those, it's a 1-week micro internship. For some of those, it's a full, 8 to 10 week summer internship, but really work with each of them throughout the city of Columbus on an individual level to figure out what the company needs, and how our student athletes can help, in that space as an intern. Hopefully that helps to answer that question.
One of the questions was, do you know if your students use Adobe Express on their smartphones a lot for creation on the go? And I can say personally that I witnessed the students in the classroom using both laptops and mobile devices. But just from speaking with the students and seeing some of the work, I know that they were using their mobile devices on the go. I know that one of these students was actually hired by the athletic department to do graphic design for the fall. So that will, a lot of that be mobile based as well. So you're getting a little bit of both things.
I saw another one here too, which is very intuitive actually. Have any of the students proactively shared and learned their knowledge and experience by this exercise, by word of mouth, or by showing other student athletes within Ohio State, what they've learned to create their brand portfolios?
Yeah, I think that's one thing I think everyone in this space also realizes, is your best advocate is your student athletes, to be able to spread the word and get their teammates and peers to buy into things. So we've had, I think, some real interest for more student athletes to want to engage and want to know when we're going to engage in this program next year. So we have had some good benefit and good feedback from our student athletes. Like I said, they had a great experience. The skills that they learned, they are happy to share and have shared, which has really garnered some more interest from our student athletes across those teams that really want to learn more and figure out how or when we're going to launch the program again for them to get more involved.
How do you collect data, track on this program? Surveys, interviews, participation, outcomes. What are the types of things you're looking at?
So Logan just went on mute. He knew I would take this one. I am a self-proclaimed data nerd. So my background, I have a PhD studying leadership development and program effectiveness. So I do a lot of the data tracking for all of our different programs. I know at the beginning I showed a slide that kind of went over a lot of the programs that we have. So we do a post-program survey on every single one of our programs just to get student athlete feedback. And then on this one specifically, we actually did a focus group interview with the participants as well. So we do a lot of kind of the data tracking, program assessment. Our goal is that, we aren't just doing what we did last year just to do it, but really to make sure we're constantly improving and taking student athlete feedback into consideration. So everything from focus groups to, a survey about their experience, frequency of the meetings, if they prefer them to be virtual or in person, all those different things to really make sure that we are improving for future years.
Are there any other questions from anybody? I think we were trying to keep up with the questions as they were coming in, fast and furious. I will,
Kirsten, it's Jill. I do think there were a lot of questions about how, who, and what time was spent teaching the students how to use the Adobe applications. And there are several questions. So I think if even though we covered it, I think it's okay to cover that one more time.
okay, absolutely. So Ohio State actually came to Adobe with a proposal of what they wanted to do. And they'd asked that we meet in the evenings every other week across several weeks. And we put together a plan about what we thought we could put together in a very truncated period of time. So you can imagine 20 sleepy college students in the evenings after workouts all day and classes. And we have 1 hour to try to stuff new software into them. So we spent 2 weeks on Express. We spent a week on Rush and a week on Lightroom. My colleague, Eric Rouse, who was not able to join us today, he's on sabbatical, was a big part of that in helping the actual hands-on piece of it. He's another name just to thank him for his help with all of this as well. But ideally in the future, we'll be able to connect Ohio State so that they'll be able to run this even more with the teams that they have on campus that actually do this for students on campus. And we can continue to expand this to be able to address the number of people that we need to going forward. So if we have to wind up doing this in the fall or spring, or we'll figure out how to do that. But the time amount was not significant. And yes, Jill said that they also had 24/7 support, and we also gave them an extraordinary amount of links and resources to turn to while we weren't there in front of them, of how to accomplish the things that they needed to. So we just built out some quick resources for them to reflect back to, many of which are in the Adobe Education Exchange, and some other links that I know that Keith plans to share here at the end.
And then just to expand, sorry, Kirsten, one other little piece. We have a creative team within our athletics department as well. So whether they're creating graphics or creating, our digital media team for social media. So we actually had our student athletes present to them for their mock interviews as well, just for some feedback from experts that are in the industry. So Adobe led most of the education, and then we actually had them come in too to provide some feedback and guidance for student athletes that were facing some challenges.
We've had a couple questions come in here about what should a school do if they'd like to do a similar program with their student athletes. It kind of depends, depending upon which school you are at. If you know who your Adobe person is, if you know your customer success manager, like myself, please feel reach out to them. Beyond that, for right now, Jill, do you have suggestions of how to manage this one?
Sure. I'll tell you what, we'll just start with my email address in the chat pod. So if you want us to make a connection, schools that have a customer success manager, these are the types of events that our customer success managers work with your college or university. And I believe we're also providing a kit for those schools that do not have customer success managers. So it's something that you could easily build a self-sustained program utilizing the tools that we provide in that kit. So in the meantime, if you don't have a customer success manager, you don't know who your account exec is, yes, I'm releasing my email address in the chat pod right now. And my name is Jill Gray. Feel free to email me.
I also just put links to the students that had given us the rights to open up their presentations to all of you. So you are welcome to check out the additional links from other students. But Morgan did just such a fabulous job in how she really connected what she learned as a student athlete back to her work as she's an electrical engineer, I think. I always forget. Yeah, electrical engineer. So it was just a very interesting perspective. Are there other questions from anybody? Feel free to come off mute and speak up if you don't want to type in there.
Yeah, and I'll just close. I mean, if we're closing out or whatever, just like I said, want to reiterate that we're really grateful for the Adobe team, Kirsten and, Eric was great and everyone else that was a part of the team. And then obviously would be remiss if I didn't mention McKenna, right? And everything that she does for our student athletes. So we're fortunate to have her. So really, we're not acting like we're experts, happy to collaborate with anybody on this call. As we know, other institutions, I think that's one of the great things about, athletics and higher education is we all really have the same goal, right? We're serving different student athletes, but all really passionate about the student athlete experience. So I think that if there's always room for more collaboration in this space, and we're happy to do so. So just really grateful for you all hopping on and for us to share a little bit about the programming that we have and our mission and our goals. So we appreciate you all. And I know everyone took a little bit of time out of their day, so we're thankful.
And I think from here, thank you to everybody for joining us. Thank you, Ohio State. Thank you to the entire Adobe team. And we'll hang on a little bit in case anybody else has any additional follow-up questions. But beyond that, please ask questions from your Adobe team. We'd love to do more of this. Thank you to Ohio State for taking the first leap in. Check out their blog story that I put the link into earlier about the program. And we look forward to hopefully talking more in the future. So thank you. Bye, everybody. We'll hang out.